Get him, guys! Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome back to another episode of Field Facts with Forrest. I'm your host, Forrest Carpenter, and today I want to talk to you about crane hunting. I've gotten so many questions about hunting cranes, it's not even funny, and it was one of my favorite things to do down when I was guiding at Ranger Creek Goose down in West Texas. It's awesome. If you haven't ever gone crane hunting, it's something you have to do. Absolutely have to do. It's so cool. The birds taste delicious. They work decoys really well. And it's super, super fun. You talk about a really neat bird. The crane's actually got the second oldest fossil record of any living bird today, second to the cormorant. But the same bone structure of the Sandhill crane goes back 9 million years. Been around a while, and it shows. You can hear it, you can see it. Just the way they move looks prehistoric, and you can see why there's a lot of people that call them pterodactyls. All right, so crane hunting is awesome, and you gotta give it a shot. All right, so there's a lot of things about cranes that are very similar to ducks and geese, more similar to like big honkers, just in kind of how they fly, big, slow wing beats. They do coast on their wings a little bit more, but they'll typically go out to grain fields, sit loosely, kind of interact with each other, but they're reasonably, territorial, so they don't really congregate super densely like lessers or snow geese or something like that. They kind of act like big honkers, and that they like their space a little bit. One thing that I will say is that crane hunting isn't for everyone, and I don't mean that in that not everybody can go crane hunting. I mean that in your state, it may not be legal to hunt cranes. So most of you know that already, but if you're not sure, be sure to check your state regs before you go out, set up a crane sped, and just run a train on them, because it's going to go very badly when the game warden shows up and lets you know that you're not one of the states that has the Sandhill crane season, all right? So check your regs. Always, always, always check your regs. Even if you've lived there forever and there's always been a season, always check your regs, because they love to change stuff up like that last minute, all right? So, like I said, sometimes they're very similar to like big Canada geese, but they do act differently in a few main ways. One of them is that they don't necessarily go back to water in the middle of the day. Even on a hot, dry day, they oftentimes will just stay in a field and do crane stuff. I don't know what that crane stuff is, but a lot of times they won't go back to water. Sometimes they won't leave the water. If they've got food right there in ankle deep water and they can walk onto dry ground, then sometimes they might not leave. So they're kind of goofy in that regard. And the best thing you can do to combat that is scout. This is where waterfowling is waterfowling as long as the day is long. Always scout, always do your homework, do your research, find out what the birds are doing. Not necessarily the afternoon before a morning hunt. Try and scout the same time you're planning on hunting. So if you're going to hunt the next morning, see if you or someone else can scout for you that morning. Someone that you can trust to tell you when they're coming off, what direction they're coming off from. Is this the main field they're going to? Did they land someplace else and then get bumped there? There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but scout the day prior if you can, or at least try to scout the same time frame that you're wanting to go. Just because there's birds there in the afternoon doesn't mean they're going to be there in the morning. It's not really how it works, and a lot of times cranes will have a system where they'll land in one field and then they'll hop to the next, hop to the next, hop to the next, and they'll go through that course over the period of a day. And then you try to go hunt the last field they were in the next morning, and they aren't there because it's an afternoon field. And by 3 o'clock, say you've left and picked up, go get lunch, come back, all of a sudden your field's full of cranes, and it'll drive you absolutely nuts. So scout when you plan on hunting them. All right. Another thing that I would say is similar to big honkers is that I like to run small, loose spreads, meaning 4 to 8 dozen, 10 dozen if you really need to go big. I mean, that's huge for cranes because it's a big, big, big bird, right? So these decoys are really big. They take up a lot of space. And you want to run them loosely. Again, very similar to big honkers. Singles, pairs, groups of 3, 6, 10, small little clusters of them to build the shape of your spread. I would say that they typically don't like flying over the decoys to land there. So I won't run tails like I will for geese. I won't run a real long tail. I'll usually build it a little bit more flat and plan on the bird stopping on the back downwind edge of the decoys. So, if you put a decoy or any kind of a wall or a shape up, think of it like a blocker wall. Don't expect them to fly over that and then work into a hole. They don't like holes. They like alleys, big zones, lots of escape routes, just like big honkers, okay? I also will prefer, unless the wind's just right, to hunt mainly silhouettes. Now, I do love socks for cranes, but the wind has to be just right. I like about 8 to 12 mile an hour of wind, much more than that, and the socks start to move a lot, which isn't always a bad thing, but most of the time when I'm watching cranes, I don't see a ton of movement. There is movement, but it's like flapping movement and jumping kind of stuff. It's not so much an active, walking, with the head down, kind of walking through the whole field looking for it. So my spread for cranes is going to be more heavily based on running silhouettes and stationary decoys. The socks fill in if the wind's just right. And man, it really makes a difference when the wind is right. Giving them something 3D to look at also helps too. Okay. The next thing, and I would say the most important thing about crane hunting, is remembering that they've got eyes as good, if not better than that dude right there, all right? When you look inside the head of a crane or even holding the head of a crane, if you look at their skull, you can see how much of their head is devoted to their eyes, and it shows. They have amazing eyesight, and they are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful when it comes to picking things out that are wrong, especially a hide. So, when you're going to hide, make sure that you have that in mind. Set up so that no movement can be detected, so that no faces can be seen. If you can cleanly expose your face and look at the birds when they're coming in, you're not hidden well enough. That's why a lot of guys like to go with A-frames or edge hides, where you can literally cover yourself up with tumbleweeds completely over the top. You're looking through brush, trying to see the bird, and it really makes a huge difference. All right, so hold still, be quiet, because they're not deaf either. They've got pretty decent hearing, but make sure that you cannot be seen. Hiding is the number one most important part of all of it, and I can't emphasize that enough. So if you take one thing away from this, if you're going to go crane hunting, hide really, really, really well. Okay? Stay hidden. One thing that I will say is a little overrated for cranes is calling. Now, while I love to crane call, absolutely love it, I've seen it be very effective at times, but more often than not, I've seen it had near zero effect, especially if you're not calling cranes well, okay? So there's a big difference between using a goose call as a crane call and actual crane calling, okay? So think about it like this. A crane does not sound like this. Not at all. Not at all. Not even close. So if you're going prr, prr, prr into the back of a goose call, it's definitely not helping you. Even at a distance, I don't feel like cranes really respond well to hail calls, especially in that manner. If you do it a little bit more like making a machine gun noise with your mouth, a little bit slower roll, that can help. But again, a goose call isn't the proper tool. It sounds better, but it's still not right. So emphasis on accuracy. And if you can't sound just like a crane, which most people can't, especially without a crane call. And I really recommend that if you're going to hunt cranes and want to call cranes, buy a crane call. All right, there's a bunch of them out there. Take a look, see what sounds best and works best for you. It's not like ducks where you can go out there with a $3 call and just go toot, 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 make something that sounds kind of like a duck, and then it'll turn them and get them coming towards you. I really feel like emphasis needs to be on accuracy. But again, you don't need a call. Be where they want to be, have a realistic spread, and let them come to you. Don't get caught up in feeling like you need to make noise to seal the deal. Again, like these guys, if you're where they're coming and you're hidden well, they're going to come. All right. Think about it like hunting a flying turkey. That's the best way I can describe crane hunting. But the biggest thing is don't make a bunch of inaccurate sounds because it's going to do nothing but hurt you. All right, so don't get caught up in calling. Hide really, 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 really well. Be where they want to be and set up loose spreads, 4 to 8 dozen, get you covered. All right, you don't need a ton of decoys. It's not something that's terribly difficult to get into. Just make sure that you get where they want to be and you should have success, okay? Go out, try it. I really encourage you, if it's something you've wanted to do, it's never a bad idea to start trying it with a guide. I'm trying to pass you on a bunch of information, but there's no information that you can learn from like your own experience. So if you can go and hunt with a guide once or twice to get your feet wet, learn how to do it, that's always a good idea. But if you want to go out there and swing the bat, really follow those pointers, and I think you can have success. I've done it all across the country, in Canada. Crane hunting is just an absolute blast, and it's very apparent why people are clinging to it and running to crane hunting, because it's so stinking cool. There is nothing like having a bird with a 6-foot wingspan coming in, and I'm telling you, when they're at 100 yards, they sound like they're at 30. So when they get to 30, it's terrifying. That cackle rattles in your chest. You open the blind up and you get this rush of adrenaline. It feels like you're shooting them out of self-defense. It is so cool. So if you haven't done it before, you gotta check out a crane hunt. Go do it. It's so much fun. If you guys have questions about it, please drop in the comments below. You can also always email me at Forrest, Forrest, at divebombindustries.com, and I will answer any questions that you might have, crane hunting or otherwise. So anyway, thanks for watching. Like, comment. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on the alerts so you don't miss further messages, and we'll catch you next time on Field Facts with Forrest.